Well, Deron, here we are for another podcast, another opportunity to get online, share things together, be able to have this conversation. I know we've been talking about a few things leading up to the start of the show today, and we've had a couple of good meetings this week. I just feel all stirred up about a lot of things we've talked about, and I know we talked about what direction we might go today as we did this recording, but I kind of like the wild path where we can just kind of maybe talk about what's going on. And maybe I'll just throw it to you and say, what is happening? What have you been thinking about? What's been going on?
Yeah, I appreciate that, BG. It's great to be here today with you. And I love these times. The reason I was smiling so much, I think, is because when we're coming on and our previous conversations, I was thinking, man, that's just reminding me of all these good things we've been talking about. But yeah, that's a great question. I thank you for bringing that back, because the idea of the wild is something, how could I describe it? Something most needed today, something to be recaptured. The spiritual value of the wild is the way I would term it. But it is, though it is a part of us, it is so much needed today, because I think we've kind of lost that. And that's, I mean, when we came to name the talked about the attributes of the work, we've been talking about wonder, wisdom, and the wild. And I've even been asked that, how did we ever come up with these three terms,
Yeah.
But the wild part was something very special to me, because it's something I have noticed in my own life, the love of nature, the love of the woods, the aspects of that. But there's something, I almost want to say, so deep and so profound in that I think if we visited it as a spiritual force, or as an igniting force, as something much more than just simply a walk in the woods, though that is great, or a mountain view, or looking at the stars. There's something so enriching and powerful in that I can put a few words to get it, to talk about it, but in no way, shape, or form can I plummet its depths. And that's where I've been thinking about this. I know we had several conversations about the aspect of the wild, about that, but back to that spiritual aspect. Let me give a couple of thoughts here. There is three elements that I'm reminded of in the aspect of the wild, and this might go down to Henry David Thoreau's great thought. It's just this one quote: all good things are wild and free. Right? He says that in this one sentence, and a lot of people think that he's talking about the woods, like wilderness, we call it, which incidentally Luther Standing Bear said, he corrects us. He said he's a Native American writer, earlier part of the 20th century. His great book, escapes me right now, Land of the Spotted Eagle. That's it. I almost had a little brain skip right there. But he said when the white Europeans came to America, and not to pick on that, like white Europeans were just this one generalized group and everybody behaved the same. But he noticed a pattern, and the people he interacted with, so I'll put it that way, he said they called it the wilderness, and they called it this. They called them savages, and they called it the wild. Like it was something to be, just so awful. But he indicates to us it was home. To us, it was Tan. Right? Now, borrowing that thought, but spinning it a little bit, I think that we've heard the wild as being something almost pejorative, almost demeaning or frantic, crazy. But in the words of Carl Jung, he says that only man is crazy. The animals are the wild animals especially, are very calculated. They know exactly what's going on. So every tree we're finding out, every animal of the forest, everything is right there on point because their lives depend upon it. They can't mess up. They can't be foolish. And Carl Jung says this line, and it's in Robert Bly's poetry book. I was trying to think of who co-authored that with him. It's called The Rag and Bone Shop of Poetry. It's a poem book for men. It's really interesting, right? And they have this one section, and it's called The Wild. And they have all these poems about wild things, They have Thoreau's quote about the wild mallard in flight, which is a fantastic piece, which I've read and reread. They have some of Rumi's poetry. He was I think he was Persian poet. Can't think of the century, but like during the Middle Ages, fantastic writer. And it's almost like a spirit of the wild. And he has this one line, and I know this is just for boys and men, but he writes it, he uses boys and men in the sentence, but I think it's for everybody. He said, young boys are wild, he writes. This is Robert Bly's commentary on this. It's a little essay he does before that section of poetry. He said, all young boys are wild. They're wild. They love the hills, the woods, the stars, the wind, the creeks. And I'm not saying that young girls don't love those too, but I know that from being a boy. We know that we've had those stories. So, see, that's what I'm taught. I'm trying to get my mind around that, why that is there or why that is so needed. So let me keep going on that, because there is something about that, and it goes down to this one idea that he talks about. Carl Jung, he said that only humanity gets crazy. Because when you're in the wild, you have to think. You've got to be on point. Your senses are aware. Notice that one thing. Your senses are aware. Think of an animal. When you walk through the woods, it has always been said that you might not think that there are animals there because you don't see them. But they know you are there. One time I tell this story. So now we have coyotes in Ohio, which anyway, which I love. I love to hear them howl. First time I ever heard them howl, I must be honest, it sent a chill. I thought, wow, that is amazing sound. And it's not a howl like a wolf howl, which I would love to hear a wolf howl, but in the wild. But it's almost a howling and a yapping, almost like this joyful exuberance, and you don't really know what's taking place. But anyway, we have coyotes in Ohio now, and I had heard them nearby. So I was up on the hill one day, and it seemed like that something or someone was watching me. And so I looked down at the ground, and you could tell where the coyotes had been. and it looked like fresh tracks and fresh debris, you know, where they had been. And I thought, maybe that sparked my interest, you know. So I walked down this path out this ridge, and I came back. I could still feel that gaze. Something was upon me, right? And then I just turned abruptly right and saw the tail. And I said, there you are, my brother. Right? And it was the tail of a coyote. Now, that might not strike everybody as this grandiose story, you know. I mean, you probably hear from people I've seen, you know, what they've seen in the wild: bear, cougar, you know, wolf, moose, everything. But still, isn't that a beautiful thought for life? To be aware. Getting to that sense of the wild is to be aware. You know, that we always talk about being aware of blessings, being aware of things that we've been given, which is fine. But what about being aware of the sun, which is coming through the clouds, or the stars which are above us, which we've often talked about, you know, you and I? What about being aware of what water feels like in a stream, or what the breeze feels like? I mean, we've become so sheltered in our modern day with our heating and air conditioning in one unit, and our constant temperatures, you know, our solid state piped in air. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
I call it fake heat, because it's not a fire. It's heat that's pumped in. Henry Beston said this in the book called The Outermost House. He said, there is something very beautiful about drinking the water from a well that you dug, building a fire from wood that you chopped, and cooking over that fire food that you raised. He was fully aware, of course, of all of the animals around him. And it was his book that Rachel Carson, I believe, gave credit for in her book, Silent Spring, as being the one main book that gave rise to the book Silent Spring. And if those who are listening don't know about it, Silent Spring, Rachel Carson's famous book, is actually the inception, or the ideas which gave us the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, because she was seeing that that poisons offered to the earth to biocides, which would kill insects or what was deemed as weeds, that they were poisoning us. Mm-hmm. And one day she thought that the birds will all die. And she said, she said in the opening words, imagine a time when spring comes and you don't hear any birds. Mm. That grips me. That grips me very deeply, because that would mean that we kill off our spirit. We kill off our senses. We kill off who we are. I mean, we are not only a part of nature, nature is a part of us. So going back to Thoreau's thought, all good things are wild and free. There's a spiritual sense of the wild. It's not, it is a walk in the woods, but there's something that's happening to us, see, in that walk. And that's what I've been pondering, how to wrap my mind around that. So I've got the senses, which are alive, and I don't want to, I just feel like I'm talking, BG. Anyway, I want to offer this here. There is something about what I call it, a fierceness of life, a spirit of life. You know, it's like, I mean, how awful is it that we have such a downward spirit in humanity today? I don't know that it, from all of the places that comes from, but I know that however we've been created, however the divine created us, call us God. In the Lakota, it was the divine, which meant the big holy of everything, which meant all of life. Whatever that gives to us, there is I call it a ferocity. I call it just a spirit, a sense of, I don't know, just being alive, being passionate, feel that fire, feel the sense, and yes, the gratefulness of being alive, being alive. You know, when Achilles was seen by Odysseus, that was one thing that Achilles always complains about. In Homer's Odyssey, he said, I would give anything to be alive again.
Yeah.
I'd be anything. Man, isn't that beautiful? I mean, you think of the great Achilles, the great warrior, you know, in the Trojan War. And he was Odysseus' friend. Of course, he was killed in the battle, you know, if you read Homer. And this comes from the ancient Greeks, of course, but it's so, isn't that a live thought? I've got to get this off my heart, BG. I'm sorry about this, but let me share this. That here you have Achilles longing to have life again, and he would say, "I would become the poor servant of a poor master, than to not be alive." I mean, I want to be alive so much that I would be in his mind, the lowest of the low, just to be alive. And if you hear it, I mean, if you might think about it, Achilles had that robustness of life. It's a spirit of life.
Yeah.
I mean, that warrior spirit. And I don't mean the warrior spirit is comfortable for everybody, but there is a sense of being in, you know, that sense of aliveness, a ferocity. And then the last thing it reminds me of is just simply the intelligence, maybe the awareness, a sense of learning, the sense of wonder, the sense of each new day. See, it's just so inspiring to me, and how much we live shackled lives of mediocrity.
Yeah.
See it, and there's something very spiritual about that. And I have yet to even plummet the depths. I think I've only, if I was writing a book, I haven't even made it through my introduction yet. I don't even know what.
I get it.
Do you see that?
I do. I could interject my thoughts if
yeah, please do.
If I have permission, but I would like to do.
You always have permission.
You and I have been talking about these concepts, these ways of thinking about things again. I'm 55 years old, and when you and I began to talk, and we began to talk about the wild, and I began to think about, you know, of course, that was my first thought as well, is that, okay, are we talking about only nature? Is it, okay, the wild? Am I going to be ziplining, climbing cliffs? What does that mean, the wild? But then I got it. I understood after a number of conversations that what you mean is you're going back to, you know, the foundation of who we are as the creation, going back to, at least this is how this is my definition of it. I don't claim to have the perfect, but, and I started to look around again, and you and I have had conversations that talk about our childhood and the adventure and the adventures that we had. And so my thoughts are taking me back more and more these days to remembering those times when I was more free, when I was more, able to do spontaneous things, when when I did see the sun, I did see clouds, and I would paint pictures in my mind in the clouds, and I would pick out images, and I would take time to do things. And then I wrestled with my religious upbringing and think, am I worshiping creation? And I wasn't. I thought maybe it was just that I was appreciating again that I'm creation and I'm connected to all of creation. And that connection has made me so appreciative again of the things that God has put all around us to enjoy, to care for. So I don't know if that's any closer to a definition, but for me, it's a matter of just realizing, again, my place in the creation and appreciating and loving all that there is and the blessings that I have around my life. I have this calendar in front of me that I follow every day. I'm very regiment, and that's important. I don't deny that. Yes. But there are times that I have to go off page, and I have to think, okay, spontaneous day today, so that I can take a deep breath again and do something new. So for me, that's been the cage door that's kind of opened for me there over our conversations, is that I just feel freer to think about things on a different level. So that's my interjection.
That's good. Well, I'm glad you do. And I think that everyone can interpret and can feel what that means for their own particular lives. I mean, we've spoken about, our various upbringings and the similarities of those, those adventures, that sense of being alive. I know that some people, I will be honest, that they might interpret that as seeing that we are worshiping a tree or something like that. Right. If I may be so bold, if you think that, you really need to rethink a lot of things. I will go so far as to say, if you think that that is what people who may not have shared your faith, particular in some instances, but still retain a sense of the wild, like our Native American brothers and sisters, like Luther Standing Bear or Yesai, two of my favorite authors that I've read recently. We don't worship trees. I mean, we do see the divine spirit in trees, the divine spirit of life, a sense where trees have a sense of being or a sense of life. And people might say, well, that's just too far. Well, if you can't see the value of that, if you can't look at the beauty of a tree and look with wonder and say that there are a lot of things that you as a human may never understand. And your job is to understand your role, your place in relationship and in connection with that, because that is not your playground, right? I mean, we don't go into a family meeting and say, you're all here for me, right? No. We're here for one another. We're in relationship, connectivity. I mean, the very word religion means to reconnect. Yeah. And so what the Native American thinkers, and I don't want to claim to be an expert, I'm far from that, but that beautiful sense that I am in connection with that which I see. I'm in relationship with my world. I am as much a part of that as it is a part of me. And when I'm seeing the work of God, or if I see the presence of God, or if I feel a sense of the wild, why does that have to be so set aside, like one to the other. Like, why can't, as you were mentioning, the calendar of our days where we're, someone might say, well, look at that, that is so demeaning, but it's not. You're valuing your time, you're putting your intelligence to your days, so that when it comes to the last day, that we look at it and we say, that was great.
Yeah.
And I want to say this. I mean, I understand our beliefs about the eternal soul. Some people disagree with that. Some people agree with that, whatever. But I want to say, and I believe this is the Spirit of the divine speaking to us, the Spirit of God. This is to be a beautiful, engaged, wonderful life. I mean, it's not to be disdained and looked upon. It's to have that sense of wildness.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you're in the wild, man, you're waking up to each day, each star that you look at is, wow, that's,
yes.
It's not like, oh, there's the star. Emerson said it best. He said, if the stars only came out once a century, you couldn't contain the joy.
Yeah.
Right? You couldn't contain the exuberance of life.
Yeah.
And isn't that a beautiful thing? I mean, they're out every single night for us to enjoy, for us to wonder about.
Right.
And we can say, well, we can spiritualize, and I can ramble on and on sometimes about the concept of it, but the way I feel about it as a human being is it makes me appreciate who I am as a human being. It helps me to have a sense of compassion for all that is around me, and a sense of protecting that. And it should disturb us when we just simply look upon that as our consumption, that it is ours for the taking, no matter what the cost. Because what will happen is, one day, if we have that attitude and we carry that out enough, one day spring will come, and it will be a silent spring. And Rachel Carson said that first, and I'll say it again with her. One day we will lose everything we are. So it's a recapturing. It's a recapturing a sense of who we are in the divine, who we are in our spirits, who we are in life. I mean, how can we say that, as you mentioned, and this was wonderful when you said it, who would want to go back and take that away from us? I mean, what person in their right mind would want to go back to ourselves and say, listen, it's you don't need to be doing this. This is awful. Take this all away. You don't need to be climbing that tree. You don't need to be looking at that bird on its nest. You don't need to be figuring that out. You don't need to be feeling that breeze. Don't look at those stars. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares about that river? Who cares? Who cares about the animal that you've just seen? Who cares about that? Yeah. Come on, live the adult life. Yeah, that's what you need to do. Yeah. No, we want to go back there. And so back to the calendar, we see it as our days. We see this spirit of spontaneity, and it's just a beautiful thing. And isn't that wonderful? It's every bird wants to build its nest and has to build its nest, just like we have to spend our days and do the things that we need to do. But isn't there something within us that just loves the beauty of it? That's a line that Maria Popova wrote. I want to borrow her line. She was talking about, it escapes me the subject she was writing on, but she said that we find out, and I'm going to paraphrase her, we find out that we are creatures not of brutality, but creatures of beauty. Isn't that lovely? I just love that. I don't know whether that that makes anybody else feel anything, but that's the reason that the wild is put there. Indeed. And I appreciate that question. Yeah, that's good.
I think that's great. And you've said this before, and I'd like to bring this up again because I think this is so interesting to me because of just the changes that are even happening to me at 55, where most people are not going through a lot of change anymore. They're pretty much settled in who they are and what they do. And you and I have talked about, we're not made like that. We have to continually evolve and grow and learn and become, I'm always wanting to do that. But you've said that, no matter what choice we make, it's going to be a cost. It doesn't matter if you choose to not be connected to the wild, that will cost you. Although you may not know the cost because it will ultimately numb you to where you're not aware of what you're paying, the price that what you're losing. But you also are going to pay a cost if you choose to live the wild life, the life of connection. And you gave a great story or a fable, I think that's the right term, the other day at lunch. And I would love for you to share that again, because I thought that was so good about understanding, there's a cost, but which is the greater value for our lives?
Yes.
Would you mind sharing that story?
It's fine. I ran across this in some of my readings. It was Aesop's old fable. And he had gotten it from other places about the wolf and the dog. And it takes place, there's several versions of it, but the one that this is kind of my interpretation of it, or where I want to go with it. One day there was this wolf who he had lived roughly. He was not getting enough food. He was having a hard time during the time. He had suffered for a time, and he was still alive, but he was having a hard time getting the food because the things started getting shut up that he would need to eat, and the animals were gone that he could hunt, and in that way of connection too. There was nothing for him. He was just having a really rough time. He sees this dog, and the dog looked beautiful. The dog was well fed, and the wolf admired how beautiful he appeared. He was looked to be well fed. His fur was shiny, and he almost had a sense like he had it all. And he walks up to the dog, and he's speaking to the dog, and have this conversation. And he said, I admire you. You look so well. The dog said, yeah, it's really good for me. Kind of wags his tail, I suppose. He looks at him and he says, yeah, I have it good. I really do. I've got it great. I get meals. I get to stay in warm places. I don't have to figure out, where I'm going to sleep. Wow, it's lovely. It really is. I don't have to worry about really too much of anything at all. Okay. And the wolf just looks at him and thinks, wow. And the dog says, hey, you can have that too. And the wolf says, really? I can have that too? He says, yeah, you just come along with me. I'm sure we can figure this out. And the wolf, it is said by one story, the wolf actually had tears in his eyes. He thought, I'm at the jackpot. This is what I've always wanted. I love this. And so they're on their way to the home, and the dog is leading. But I guess they were crossing some rocks, or a log or something was there, and somehow the dog turned its head, and the wolf noticed that there was this place on the dog's neck that had been worn off. It didn't look right. He said, wait a second, hold on. What's that place around your neck? The dog said, what place? And they're just keeping on walking. And he said, no, that place right there on your neck. What is that? And they stopped for a second. He said, it's nothing. And he said, the wolf said, no, what is it? What is it? What is that place? He said, that's just my collar. That's where my collar goes. He said, your what? He said, my collar. He said, what's that for? I said, well, my master puts my collar on and holds me back, controls me. Sometimes he even chains me, but it's all right. And the wolf said, everything that was wild in him came back. So he said, no thanks. I'll chant it. So then the author put it, and you can tell he stops lying. There is a cost, but you almost have to make yourself see that which do you wish to be, the dog or the wolf? Because there's a cost in both. But everything that looks good, everything that seems so, need I say it, tame, and that we're well fed and our homes are fine, and we got everything away from us now, and it's just us. What's that, BG? Your mic?
Comfortable.
Yes, comfortable. Yes, that's right. And we're kind of, haven't we lost our freedom? So freedom costs. It'll cost that you may not be you won't be as certain with your days. There's a bit of edginess to it, isn't it? It's a bit of adventure. Remember Eleanor Roosevelt's line? I don't know why she gave it, or the context, I should say, but do something that makes you afraid. Why should fear always rule you? Goes down to I have to say it one time, and I want to broadcast it on our podcast. I want to talk about Icarus one of these days when we have time. I know we're probably running out of time. I want to keep this in a time limit that's for everybody to enjoy. But there's a sense of when beauty will cost you. Michelangelo's old line that had he known what beauty would have done to him, he said he would have torn out his eyes as a young man. But yet he loved it. So it's kind of, I don't know, isn't that where we're most beautiful in our humanity, where even our God, whatever God we believe in, whatever divine we see, whatever soul that we have, even if we just think about that, isn't that when we're at our best, when we're at our edgiest, when we're at our adventure, when we're at our, there's so much more here. But wouldn't it be great to not be just like, just sort of wind ourselves down in like these comfortable ways, and just kind of makes us lose our sense of life? Wouldn't it be far better to go out with that blaze, to go out with that fire? It's like Seeger's great poem, I have a rendezvous with death. See, I have a rendezvous at some disputed barricade. And he said, I will not fail that rendezvous. He said some want to be, just like lying about in their beds of comfort, but not me. He said, I have a rendezvous with death on some disputed barricade, I think he says. It was reportedly John F. Kennedy's favorite poem. I have a rendezvous with death.
Yeah.
So I don't know really quite how to get that, but I would love to encourage anyone that is listening to have a sense of life, maybe to look around you and to see those places, may I be bold enough to say, that has tamed you down and put you in shackles. And you're living a life not that you're pleased with, not on fire with passion and beauty, but it has been that you've become well fed but put on a chain.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what all to do with that, because that's really radical, but that's where my mind is going, my friend, and I'm kind of there with that. So I want to talk more on that, because there's so much more there. And like I said on the website, when I put the wild there was a reason I did that, because I wanted to leave that open. And there's so much more there, so much more of wonder, so much more of wisdom. I mean, how can you contain these?
Yeah.
How can we just say, that's it, that's the wild?
Yes.
It's much more than a walk in the woods.
Yes.
It's like it's like being alive. And I don't mean to like look ridiculous with that. So, wow. But it's okay. It's okay. You got to push the edge a little bit.
That's right. Well, I love how the wild makes us, brings authenticity. It brings honesty to who we are. That's what I love about it. And I love how you express it. I love how you animate things. Your storytelling is great. And I would just like to encourage anybody who's watching or listening to the podcast to give us your feedback. Even if you have a differing opinion, we would just love to hear from you. Has any of what we've talked about resonated with anyone in the audience? We would love to know how you're feeling about that. I think it's a great opportunity to have dialogue, to have discussion. And I know Deron would love to, hear feedback from those who are listening, because, his goal, his heart is to make an impact and a difference in the community, in the world that he lives in. And that's why we're here, just to open discussion, to talk about things that are, passionate to us and particularly to him. And so I would just encourage anybody who's listening today to please reach out, give us comments. And we're tough enough to hear the alternate opinions if you have them. We'd love to hear what people think. Am I right in sharing?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, BG. And thank you for that. Yes, the sense of, it's a sense of awakening.
Yeah.
I think awakening to great ideas of life.
Yeah. What makes us
human? What makes us alive? What makes us filled with wonder? What makes us, what are the points of wisdom that we can take? What is it to enjoy, protect, or cherish the sense of the wild within us? Those three themes have so much more room to grow. And I believe that if we can begin to think of how they apply to our lives and making our lives better through my favorite themes of beauty, goodness, truth, courage. Encouraging is a beautiful term. And to see us as all on this beautiful, good and way of searching for truth of our lives that helps us, that emboldens us, that makes life better, gives us a sense of what life is about. If we can but do that, we are doing the work that we've been called to do with the podcast, with the website, with everything. And in all due seriousness, we can talk about good stories, and when I feel things, I can, I still boyish enough, still youthful enough that it almost makes me smile. It's just this. It's almost like, wow, let me say something about this because this is so interesting. And I believe that in such a profound way is something I want us to cherish, whatever ways we cherish it. And I would love to hear from people, love to hear the responses, love to dialogue. It's the way I teach when I'm in the classes, as all of my students know. And as I always try to assure them, I love the dialogue. The dialogue is where it happens. That goes all the way back to Plato. He was all about the idea that he really did not know. I mean, Socrates, he's writing of Socrates, and he has Socrates say this in the text, that the one who is wise is the one who knows they do not know. So see, it's the one who cannot simply just put that down in step 1, step 2, step 3, and that's it. You don't know. That's an old line from Socrates when he found out that the oracle, Apollo spoke through the oracle of Delphi and said that he was the wisest in all of Greece, but he understood that he did not have wisdom. And that bothered him because Socrates was wild, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. So he went around asking all of the tame ones, what is wisdom? And they said what they thought they knew. And when he applied that to his own life, he could suss that out himself and knew that there was nothing there to what they were saying. Then it clicked. He was the one who was wisest because he was the one who did not know. So he could not put everything in just simply words, text. And plus he had a sense of that wild and freedom. And that's how you make a difference in the world. That's how you understand it. That's that punch. That's that vibrancy. And that's that spirit. So enjoy the journey with us. And that's what I would encourage anybody. I want you to enjoy this journey. We don't have all of the answers, but we're on the path. And through and by the dialogue, we will find truths for our lives that make sense.
And the next time you see these two faces, the next time you hear these two voices, we'll continue the dialogue, we'll continue the discussion, we'll continue
absolutely
thinking deeply about things and opening up the conversation and continuing that adventure. Deron, it's always great to be with you. Thanks for
Thank you, BG.
A great time today. A great time.
Thank you, my brother, my friend. We'll look forward to next time. Thank you.